It's a sad day for Ryoshu fans. Ryoshu is not a real MILF!
You are not the father!
Anyway, spoilers for Kanto 9. When people talk about potential in Limbus Company, people usually answer with Sunshower Heath and Sinclair. And on the surface, those answers do make sense. Sunshower Heath, the one who stands beneath his shredded and gloom-filled umbrella, waiting to prove himself worthy of the monarch, potential man. Or is it Sinclair who bears the mark of Cain, and in a later chapter finally grew some shin and mong and manifested a stronger version of himself into reality to fight for the things he truly believes in? In a way, you can say that he's finally starting to grip his fate and is slowly starting to hatch into a new person. The game even tells you that out of all the sinners, he's the one with the most potential. So, the answer is clear. Sinclair has the most potential out of all the sinners, right? But what if I told you that you're all wrong? What if I told you that the person with the most potential is not Sinclair, nor is it Ryoshu, who is now a literal walking concept incinerator? What if I told you the sinner with the most potential has been quietly sitting in the background, trying his best to blend in, trying his best to be outgoing despite his broken shell? What if I told you the sinner with the most potential was Gregor Samsa? To understand this better, we need to talk about what potential actually means. The dictionary says it's having or showing the capability to become or develop into something in the future. That description perfectly fits Gregor, especially after witnessing his unfinished form in Kanto 9. The Roach Emperor, or as I'd like to call him, Asmongold. Jokes aside, this was one hell of a fun fight. It was also very difficult despite the red gaze being with us. And to think this wasn't even his final form, this is giving me some major Perfect Cell vibes. After witnessing this, a few questions comes to mind. Who and what even is Gregor? Sure, we know him as a lovable and outgoing unk who carries deep trauma regarding the first Smoke Wars, him having to fight in a meaningless war over territory, and having to see everyone he knows and loves die in front of him, and the guilt that follows after him. Not only that, but he was also only a teenager when he was brought into the Smoke Wars. To understand Gregor's potential, let's get to know him a little better. Or for those who already know him to an almost obsessive degree, this will just reinforce your love for him even more. So calm yourself. Gregor is a laid-back, outgoing, and grounded character who is one of the kindest and yet one of the most awkward people I know. He is like that one friend who is very kind to others and tries to fit in everywhere he can, but just like a puzzle piece, sometimes the pieces don't fit. That is why, to me, he kinda just blends into the background to act as comedic relief or to give crucial exposition. He also has a sick roach arm that pops and crackles every time he moves it, a reminder of his past and a remnant of a fallen wing. Gregor is a literary reference to the book Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. The book is about a salaryman named Gregor Samsa who suddenly one day wakes up to find himself transformed into a monstrous vermin. A cockroach in Gregor's case. Gregor then goes on with his life, trying to cope with his new form, as one by one, each of his family members alienate him more and more. Not just because of his new form, but because he's unable to fulfill his duty as the breadwinner of his household. He is also only 167 centimeters, or 5'6". Looks like me and Gregor are in the same boat here. We're both short kings. But my excuse is that I'm Asian. What's yours, Gregor? Oh, you were drafted into war at a very young age and were experimented on to have insect spark grafted onto you, all to serve as a soldier in a war you didn't even want to be in? Huh, sounds like cope to me. Despite the LCB only having 12 sinners, Gregor is somehow the 13th, the odd one out of the group. And to alienate him even further, he was also born on February 29th, the elusive leap year. Surely this doesn't raise any red flags, does it? Now that we got to know Gregor a little better, let's go on to answer the question, what is Gregor? Gregor is a biological weapon of OG Corp, not to be confused with New G-Corp, who now dabbles in gravity. Old G-Corp, on the other hand, is far more insidious. They dabble in genetic augmentation, with the ability to edit someone's DNA to make them stronger, faster, and more inhuman. Old G-Corp could have done many great things with their technology, like curing cancer, or the equivalent of that in the Project Moon universe. But curing cancer was the least of their concerns. They had a war to win, and so they needed soldiers, or better yet, they needed monsters. Former G-Corp did not create heroes. They created monsters that could survive the harshest of environments. And what better monsters are there than the pest that crawls on all of its limbs, existing in every corner of the city, always eating, always breeding, never truly being able to be wiped out. The perfect soldiers for such a war. Gregor was one of these so-called monsters, but luckily for him, he was able to keep the better parts of his appearance, despite his genome being spliced with that of a cockroach. All but one of his arms transformed into that of an insect, and so he was deemed a success, making him the poster child of G-Corp, plastering his face on every corner of the wing to serve as propaganda to lure in those who were none of the wiser into a life of torture and alienation. Not everyone was as fortunate as Gregor. Those subjected to the procedures were permanently altered, wings tearing the way through human backs, insect limbs bursting through flesh where arms and legs once were, faces permanently replaced with mandibles, a fate worse than death. Gregor grew tired of the battlefield, all the death and decay around him, bodies piling higher and higher as the war continued, until suddenly one day, he decided to abandon the war altogether, leaving his friends and family behind, along with his duty and obligation to the wings. As the smoke war rages on, old G-Corp along with former L-Corp was dismantled by the other wings, its research buried, its leadership erased, its soldiers discarded. A living remnant of a system the world decided should never exist again. Although Gregor left G-Corp, a piece of the former wing still haunts him to this day. His arm. The one thing that was once seen as something to be praised, something to be looked up to, suddenly one day went out of control, transforming itself into a piercing limb, striving to pierce the heart of an innocent bystander as he desperately holds it back, begging for it to be cut off, only for it to grow back just as fast. And so he ran away again, wandering aimlessly, never truly being able to feel normal again, until suddenly one day he met Faust of Limbus Company. She offered him a contract to grant any one of his wishes if it's within their power to do so. Whether he had nowhere else to turn back to, or just wishful thinking, he ultimately accepted the contract, and that is how Gregor of Limbus Company came to be. I hear you saying, what does that have anything to do with Gregor having the most potential? Well, this brings us to Canto 9. Unbeknownst to Gregor, Herman, the head scientist of former G-Corp, who is also her mother, bestowed upon him a blessing. But to Gregor, it might as well be a curse, a seed of royalty. One of the great four infestation of former G-Corp, a king among kings, a nightmare given form, the Roach Emperor. I'd be lying if I didn't say that the fight with Roach Emperor Gregor was by far the most difficult of Canto 9. Unlike the other bosses, Gregor was the only one to force me to use Dante's ability, and even then I had to use some of my lunacy to beat him. Vergilius, what the fuck are you doing, bro? Lock the fuck in! This is no time to be playing around! Oh, okay, one more hit. Vergilius, you fucking asshole! You had one job! This was basically how the entire fight went. The fact that he's able to go toe-to-toe with a colored fixer is proof enough of his potential. Vergilius was not messing around during this fight. He was using everything in his arsenal, Shin, Mang, you name it. He even manifested his ego, saying, "I will wager my life so that I may engrave it all into those eyes." To me, that says, I might die, but before I do, I'm taking you with me. Even so, Gregor was able to endure Vergilius' attack, sometimes outright beating him in a clash. I also believe that Gregor was holding himself back, since his panic type switches to kill me. A clear sign that he's still in there fighting against his instincts to march, consume, feast, indulge, infest, procreate, and thrive. His blood is also very unique, being able to reduce the damage of all statuses by 50%. Now that is truly ridiculous. He is also able to inflict all damage types, an excellent nod to his ego. Suddenly one day, Roach Emperor Gregor is also kitted with a new type of coin called an excision coin, a coin that overrules the property of unbreakable coins, leaving them unable to retaliate. To me, that is exactly what an emperor would do. Overrule and overpower. Even when it comes to a colored fixer such as Vergilius, Gregor keeps adapting as the fight continues, just like the insect he was based on, the German cockroach. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about these pests, but I can say with full confidence that these are by far the worst of them all. One of the most invasive and most prolific vermin out of all of them. It only takes them a few generations to infest an entire house, which doesn't take long. Only a few weeks, maybe a month or so. And because they procreate so fast, they can build up an immunity to all sorts of pesticides. Now I know why Valencia called him the worst one of the four. On that note, why maggots and moth? I could think of a few insects way worse than them, like the mosquito princess or the ant king. Lord of the Flies can stay though, that's a pretty cool title. Plus, it's a reference to Beelzebub. No, not that one. This one. Imagine for a second what would have happened if Gregor fully molted and let his instincts take over. Like Herman said, the Roach Emperor is but another layer of wrapping.
바퀴 황제. 그건 포장지를 뜯다가 나온 조금 더 멋진 포장지일 뿐이야.
This is why biological weapons are banned. They are simply too dangerous. We've seen it time and time again. Resident Evil, Terraformers, heck, even the Flood is a result of someone playing God. Imagine a mirror world where every corner of the city was infested with nothing but vermin. No more syndicates, no more fixers, no more wings to hide in. Only the collective mind of the swarm remains. And on top of it all sits God Emperor Gregor. And that is why I say Gregor is the one with the most potential. Someone who is destined to rule the world given enough time to adapt. But luckily, that future will never come to be. Because he's with us now. A band of drifters and hooligans. A place he can finally call home. Before I end the video, let me clear the waters a bit. Yes, Sinclair is touted to be the one with the most potential, him being the chosen one and all. And his potential is fully realized in Canto 9, where he manifested a future version of himself, who took part in the second Smoke Wars. He was also level 80, so within the next 4 cantos, he will be able to wield Shin and generate 2 rings of Mong, which puts him right below Vergilius. That's pretty impressive, seeing as each Kanto is only a few months from each other. So wouldn't that make him the one who holds the most potential? Here's my counter argument. That's not even him! It's a version of himself from a future that may or may not exist. Even future Sinclair himself doesn't know if his timeline is inevitable. So I'm putting this twink on fraud watch for once again running away and letting somebody else handle it, whether it's by Dante or Schrodinger Sinclair, until he himself metaphorically grips his fate by the balls. To me, he will always be a bitch. My Catherine! I loved her!